Tensions are rising, alliances are cracking, and a shocking question is now spreading across the world. Does the United States really want to attack Israel again? It sounds extreme, almost unbelievable. But behind the headlines, there's a much deeper story, a story about pressure, politics, and power. So, let's break down what's really happening. Recently, the United States announced it will send around 200 troops to Israel. Officially, this move is to support a new ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Not to fight, but to monitor peace, deliver aid, and ensure that both sides respect the agreement. These troops are not entering Gaza. Their mission is focused on humanitarian coordination and intelligence support. However, the timing and the location of this deployment have raised a lot of questions, and some people believe it's part of a much larger geopolitical message. The ceasefire agreement itself is historic. Israel approved the first phase, which includes releasing about 48 Israeli hostages in exchange for nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. At the same time, humanitarian aid, including over 170,000 metric tons of food, medicine, and supplies, is waiting at the border, ready to enter Gaza once the ceasefire officially holds. Now, to understand why this moment matters so much, we need to go back to the relationship between the United States and Israel. For decades, the US has been Israel's strongest ally, giving billions in military aid, defending Israel at the United Nations, and sharing intelligence and technology. But in recent years, something has changed. Public opinion in America, especially among younger generations, has started to shift. Many Americans are now questioning whether US support for Israel should remain unconditional, especially after repeated civilian casualties in Gaza. Inside Washington, even top officials are starting to push for more accountability. And that's why, when this new ceasefire plan appeared, the US decided to step in, not just to help, but to oversee. So what exactly is the US demanding from Israel? First, Washington wants open humanitarian access to Gaza. That means allowing the United Nations and NGOs to deliver food, water, and medical care freely without Israeli blockades. Second, it wants a complete release of all civilian hostages held by Hamas. Third, it's calling for Israel to gradually reposition its troops away from heavily populated areas. And finally, the US wants a long-term plan for Gaza's future. Who will govern it, who will rebuild it, and how to make sure groups like Hamas cannot regain control. In short, the United States is not threatening Israel with force, but it's applying a new kind of pressure. Do what we say, or we step back from your side. Of course, this strategy hasn't made everyone happy. Inside Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu's government is divided. Some right-wing ministers believe any compromise with Hamas is a sign of weakness. Others say Israel must accept the deal to bring hostages home and rebuild the country's image internationally. For the Israeli people, opinions are mixed. Some welcome US involvement. They see it as a stabilizing force that might finally bring peace. Others view it as interference or even betrayal from their closest ally. On the ground in Gaza, the situation is still desperate. Thousands of buildings destroyed, millions displaced, and the longer aid is delayed, the greater the risk of famine and disease. That's why the world is watching this ceasefire so closely, because if it fails, the humanitarian crisis could spiral beyond control. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is reacting. Arab nations like Egypt and Qatar have supported the ceasefire, saying it's the only path to lasting stability. The United Nations has praised both sides for agreeing to negotiate, but warns that this truce will mean nothing unless humanitarian aid actually reaches people. At the same time, groups like Hezbollah and Iran are observing carefully. Any sign of weakness or division between the US and Israel could change the entire balance of power in the region. Even global powers like Russia and China are watching, ready to use any American misstep to strengthen their own influence in the Middle East. So what happens next? There are several risks still hanging over this fragile deal. First, the ceasefire could collapse at any time. All it takes is one rocket, one airstrike, one act of defiance. Second, humanitarian access is still uncertain. Even if aid trucks are ready, border control and security checks could slow everything down for weeks. Third, domestic backlash. In Israel, far-right politicians are furious about the prisoner release. In America, some politicians say the US shouldn't be sending troops anywhere near Gaza at all. And finally, the long-term risk: if Gaza's future leadership isn't clearly defined, chaos could return, and a new war could begin again within months. So let's return to our original question. Does America want to attack Israel again? The truth is, no. But what America does want is control, influence, and leverage. For decades, Israel acted freely, knowing Washington would always have its back. Now the US is demanding results: fewer civilian deaths, real humanitarian access, and progress toward peace. This isn't a physical attack, it's a political one. A test of loyalty between two allies that have always stood together until now. Whether this ceasefire becomes the start of peace or just another pause before the next war depends entirely on how both sides act in the coming days. So what do you think? Is America truly changing its stance toward Israel? Or is this just another diplomatic game behind the scenes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more deep global analysis like this, make sure to subscribe for future updates. Thanks for watching.